It's a great pleasure to share in the excitement surrounding the discovery of a previously unknown piece of piano music by the great Polish composer Frédéric Chopin. This single sheet was recently discovered at the Morgan Library in New York. In truth, it's only an unfinished fragment of a piece on a small postcard-sized manuscript. Scholars have concluded that, in fact, it really is in Chopin's own handwriting. The notation of the music itself has been verified as authentic, as has the title, Waltz. And so we in the piano department, along with virtually everyone else in the piano world, have taken an interest in examining this music more closely to see what's up. Why so few measures? Why incomplete? Why such a small piece of paper? This seems to be what is known as a presentation piece. Composers would sometimes do that. They might give a small piece of manuscript paper to a friend, a student, or perhaps after visiting or staying for a brief time at someone's home. A patron, perhaps, they might write a little something to leave with their host, a few measures of a piece of theirs or a theme or two, and sign it. Their host could have a memento of their time together. But even if that's the case, this is clearly an unfinished presentation piece. It never really quite ends. There's even a leftover note at the end of the manuscript after the double bar, as if Chopin were getting ready to start a new section that he didn't wind up writing. I wonder what that would have been. And the notes themselves are curious and fragmentary. In a way, it reads something like a jumble of disordered half-thoughts. It's almost as if Chopin just jotted down a few fleeting ideas and then put them aside without ever pursuing the ideas any further. Any person who composes knows this phenomenon. You sometimes get an idea or two and just jot them down for future reference. It's done very quickly, so the basic ideas are not forgotten. I might mention that around this same time, I had been reading Alan Walker's biography of Chopin. The discovery of this small manuscript reminded me of a particular episode in the book, a description of a conversation Chopin had on his deathbed with a close friend at the very end of his life. There will be found many compositions more or less sketched. In the name of the friendship you bear me, I ask that they should all be burnt, consigned to the flames. For I have always had a great respect for the public, and whatever I have published has always been as perfect as I could make it. I do not wish that under the cover of my name, works that are unworthy of the public should be spread abroad. In fact, his friends and family did not comply with his wishes. They went on to publish a number of Chopin's works after his death, some of which are marvelous. I'm so very thankful they saved these compositions from being destroyed, as they are of enduring musical and artistic value. Chopin did not seem to recognize the quality of some of these leftover pieces. But in my opinion, the recently discovered fragment does not fall into this category. It seems to me that this fragment is exactly the sort of cast-off sketch that Chopin wanted never to see the light of day. After spending a bit of time with the manuscript and also knowing how Chopin felt, I got the idea of trying to make something out of it. Even the discarded ideas of such a remarkable musical mind as Chopin's really do have some value. I was struck by a couple of moments in the music. I could feel Chopin's spirit in some of these notes. I wondered if it might be possible to bring these fragmented ideas into a kind of performable state by trying to finish it somehow, as Chopin might have done. My interest in this piece became more than that of just a pianist. It became a creative interest, that of a composer. I quickly found I wasn't so much drawn into just the fragment itself as I was in the implications and possibilities it opened up. Of course, it's really impossible to know what Chopin might have made of this material. I would have been fascinated to see, as would we all. But I guess it strikes me as less of a betrayal of Chopin's final wishes to take this homeless and abandoned thematic material and make some sort of finished piece out of it, rather than just leaving it in its fragmented state. That's my thinking anyway. And so I came up with a piece. I'm calling it Waltz-Mazurka, Fragments of Chopin. That's because the fragment musically lies somewhere between a waltz and a mazurka. Chopin in his compositions frequently liked blurring the divisions between genres, as you can see in his Polonaise Fantasy or Fantasy Impromptu. There are also mazurkas that are waltz-like. This is Opus 63, number 3. Sounds very much like a waltz. Also, vice versa. There are waltzes that sound a bit like mazurkas. This is Opus 64, number 2, a waltz. Sounds a bit like a mazurka. There are other cases in which Chopin seems to mix styles. The Nocturne in C-sharp minor, one of the unfinished works that was published after Chopin's death, is certainly a nocturne. But in the middle, there's a kind of outline sketch of a mazurka. In making my completion, I took various fragments of Chopin's works, piecing them together as the musical flow seemed to warrant. Along the way, I added much of my own as well. I recently recorded it for the piano department's video project having to do with this fragment. It's been very interesting to be a part of it. I might mention that it all reminds me of something I myself once overheard the great American composer George Crumb say after a concert of his music here in Michigan. I had just performed Crumb's song cycle, Apparition, on a recital along with my wonderful voice colleague, Frida Herseth. Crumb was in attendance. We were all standing backstage at Rackham Auditorium. One of the composition students approached Crumb and wanted to ask him a question. I don't know if many of you know Crumb's works or not, but he often quotes other people's music here and there in his own composition. So the conversation was something like this. Mr. Crumb, can I ask you a question? Yeah. That big, lush song near the end of the song cycle. Yeah? That tonal section. Yeah. Is that a quote of some kind? No, not really. It sounds kind of like Mahler. Well, it's kind of in that world, you know. Yes, it's always sounded darn familiar to me. Do you recognize it? Do you recognize it? Crumb looked around at everyone standing there. Nobody could place it. Then Crum said something very interesting. You know, composing is a funny thing. You write and write and write. And in the end, maybe 10% is you. The rest is kind of half-remembered other musics. I thought about that when I wrote this piece, Fragments of Chopin. These discarded few measures of music, how they were lost, forgotten for almost 200 years, picked up again by the music world, and then across much time and space, perhaps something might be made of them. I suppose Fragments of Chopin comes across as a kind of half-remembered music, a hard-to-place piece, Chopin but not Chopin, a wandering across the keys, a suggestion of music that might have been. I hope people will enjoy. As for me, I certainly have enjoyed writing it. I feel it's brought me closer to Chopin, and I honestly think that whatever a person does to bring them closer to music, well, that's something worth doing.